The reason I'm making this video is because the center position is just really hard to compare, as the center position changes from era to era. So I'm going to be giving you the best center every 10 years in the NBA, starting at the 70s and up till the 2020s. So like current day. And if you enjoy this video and want me to do it for other positions, let me know, but I'm not going to waste any of your time. I'm just going to get right into it. Before I get started and go into this video, I will say, Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell, not on this. You know why? I did not watch him play with my two eyes. I never watched him play a live game. I do watch a lot of NBA TV throwback games when I'm bored at home. Never have I seen either of these two play a full game of basketball, so I don't know enough about them to rank them or compare them to other players. So don't be mad when you don't see them on this list, but let's get into it. We start this video in the 1970s and talking about Lou Alcindor. Now, if you don't know who Lou Alcindor is, get your basketball knowledge up. But Lou Alcindor is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem ran the 1970s and a decent amount of the 80s. I picked Kareem for the 1970s and not the 80s because if you look at it, he was better in the 70s. Don't argue with me. And it's kind of funny because Kareem is most known for his time with the Lakers and playing with Magic Johnson. But his peak was while he was on the Bucks. He was on the Bucks from 1969 to 1975, where he averaged an insane stat line of 30 points, 15 rebounds, and 4 assists, with almost 3.5 blocks a game. Yes, this is an insane stat line, but he started to hit a decline, and no, it isn't because of the competition, it's because he went to the Lakers, and he was leaving his prime, but he still managed to average 25 points and 13 rebounds to finish out his time in the 70s era. Also, keep in mind that Kareem did play 3 years in college before making his transition to the NBA and getting drafted by the Bucks. But Kareem is easily the best center of the 70s. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Don't even try and argue with me. My most difficult decade to choose was for the 1980s because there are 3 players that all deserved it. One got the 70s, the other got the 90s, and the other got the 80s. And the one that got the 80s was Moses Malone. We can't discredit the dominance of Moses Malone, as he did average 25.9 points a game and had 14.8 rebounds from 1979 to 1985. Now, yes, I know, 1979, that's not in the 80s. Whatever, I don't really care. Just giving you his peak. Cry about it. But he didn't have defensive stats that really jumped off the board, which may lead to some people questioning his dominance. He's not really the most exciting player to talk about, but he did in fact dominate the majority of the 80s, so you got to give credit when credit is due, and Moses Malone deserves a lot more credit and deserves to be talked about a lot more than he is. So Moses Malone, you are the best center of 1980s. People really do forget about Hakeem Olajuwon when they talk about the best centers in the NBA, and it's blasphemous. In his peak from 1989 to 1996, Hakeem averaged 25.2 points a game, 12.5 rebounds a game, 3 assists a game, 1.8 steals, and you can also add 3.8 blocks, which essentially is 4 blocks a game. I could be a little biased because Hakeem is my favorite center in NBA history, but look at it this way. Hakeem was fundamentally sound in the post, and that's what people obsess about when they talk about Tim Duncan. But when it's time to talk about Hakeem, everyone goes silent. He was a master with the pump fake, he was a master with the spin move, and he was a master with footwork. Quit underrating him. Not to mention, he was a defensive nightmare, whether it be blocking shots or getting steals. Like, just look at it this way. In his best season, Hakeem played all 82 games. Not like nowadays when players sit out for load management and stuff like that. And he had 4.6 blocks a game. That is insane no matter what era you played in. He also averaged 24 points and 14 rebounds. This dude was insane. He was a nightmare, and he's always overlooked. He's in MJ's shadow, but he is literally one of the greatest players of all time and does not get credit for it. It's time to stop disrespecting Hakeem Olajuwon. Let me get really bold here. I firmly believe if Hakeem's peak wasn't in the 90s and it was any other era, he would be considered a top 10 player all time because guess what? Tim Duncan is considered a top 10 player all time, and he and Hakeem had the same exact offensive skill set if you really look at it. They're both very fundamentally sound players in the post, but Hakeem is a whole nother level defensively. So, like, why is he this underrated? He's a top 10 player all time. Don't say anything. It's bold, but it's the truth. We already know who the best center of the 2000s was. It was Shaq. There's no doubt in my mind about it. It shouldn't be a doubt in your mind. Shaq was the best center of the 2000s. If you don't believe that, there's something seriously wrong with you, because Shaq was unstoppable in his prime. But with Shaq, you don't look at the regular season stats, but you look at the postseason stats. In the postseason, from 2000 to 2003, when he got 3 rings with the Lakers, he averaged 29 points, 14.6 rebounds a game, with 3 assists and 2.5 blocks. Now, after 2003, he took a massive decline from his prime, but if you want to talk about the beginning of his prime, which started in the 90s, which is supposedly not a good era, I don't know what type of low basketball knowledge people would ever believe the 90s isn't a good era, but Shaq was still dominant in the 90s, but he was just better in the 2000s. Some narratives are just really stupid when it comes to Shaq, but saying Shaq is anything but the best center of the 2000s is purely delusional. 2010s are probably the worst era for the center position, because any really good centers had short primes and then really fell off after their primes. But I narrowed it down to 2 guys, Dwight Howard and DeMarcus Cousins, and I'm rocking with DeMarcus Cousins. Cousins was more versatile, and Prime Boogie was simply just really scary. His prime was from 2014 to 2018. After 2018, his injuries took control, and he really was not that good anymore. But it seems like people have forgotten who he really was during that time. Like, he averaged 26 points and 12 rebounds a game during that time. Cousins was different. He was kind of the first person we've seen of the dominant modern big that we see now. So it's time to give Boogie Cousins his respect, because Prime Boogie was disrespectfully good. Have you forgotten? And with no surprise, we finished this video with Nikola Jokic, who has proven he is better than Embiid, and that debating this is very disrespectful to Jokic. So let's just leave it as is until Embiid proves otherwise, but Jokic is the best center of the 2020s. But this could change over time, but for now it just looks like Jokic is going to cement himself as he is better than Embiid. Before I announce my official list, I just want you to know that David Robinson also played in the 90s, and he was absolutely dominant as well. But again, I guess the 90s weren't good, right? But David Robinson's career high in points was 71. Rebounds was 24. For assists, it was 11. And he also had a career high game of 12 blocks in one game. So he is an honorable mention in this video because Keem is just simply better than him, but he gets mentioned. But here's my list. At number 6, we got DeMarcus Cousins, who ran the 2010s. We all knew he was going to finish 6th, but just putting that out there in case you didn't know. At 5, Moses Malone, even though he's very disrespected and he ran the 80s. I'll say he's the best of the 80s. Number 4 is Jokic, and he can definitely move up, and he can also move down, but I'm just predicting that he'll be 4. Don't really care where you have him, but that's just my prediction. Number 3 is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 70s. Yes, I know he had the scoring record for a while, but let's be honest, his Lakers days were kind of overrated, and he was better on the Bucks, but people always talk about how good he was on the Lakers, even though he was simply just way better on the Bucks. And that scoring record, he played 21 years. You tend to score more points the more games you play total, right? Yeah, but no disrespect to Kareem at all. I just think Shaq, who ran the 2000s and a lot of the 90s, he was pretty dominant too. He's my number 2 guy because he was unstoppable, simply. And then number 1, if you're surprised that I put Hakeem at number 1, who ran the 1990s, then you need to rewatch this video and do a better job of listening. Now, it is close to me, meaning it's interchangeable. Like, I don't care the order, as long as you have those top three and Hakeem, Shaq, and Kareem. Those are your top three, you're fine. Don't care who's 1, 2, and 3. But Hakeem is my number 1. And that will conclude this video. I made the centers because, as we all know, it's the most evolved position and it's the most changing, so it's really hard to compare and contrast the center position. So if you want me to make another video for a different position, let me know, but I think this is like the most fluid position when it comes to ranking players. So there's no wrong answers, really. It's just off your personal opinion. And I personally believe Hakeem is the best center of all time, with Shaq as a close second and Kareem as a close third. Now, Jokic could keep moving up, and he could also move down. That simple. But there's a lot of good centers all time. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and subscribe and share it with your friends and family. Bye.